Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Impact Factor. I'm your host, Katie Van Aken, and here's another interview episode with my friend, Greg Risser. Enjoy! Hello, Greg.
Hello.
Hello, welcome to Impact Factor. So glad you could join us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Us. I say us like there's more than one person here.
They don't even know
Actually,
that.
it's a pleasure actually to chat with you because if you've listened to my podcast, no problem. If you haven't, some of the episodes are just me talking to myself, so that's always. But I think it's very therapeutic. I'm like reliving some things, you know.
hmm
So, but you're still in it, right?
I'm still in it.
You're
Yep.
still in it.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
cool. Well, I'm hoping we can talk a little bit more about that today.
Sure
Um,
thing.
so Greg, why don't you start? Why don't you just like give us a little intro, like who you are?
Sure. Yeah. I'm Greg. I'm a PhD student. This is oof, my going finishing up on my sixth year here, so I'm right at the end. So I'm a PhD student in biomedical engineering at Drexel University, which is in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good ad in Philadelphia. That's key.
Yeah.
Um, and what So you said biomedical engineering. Can you go a little bit deeper into what your research focus is?
Sure. So, yeah, I work with the interaction of like immune cells and basically how immune cells interact with blood vessels. And so my essentially my goal, what I focus on is working on immune cells that are called macrophages, and basically how they can speed the recovery of a wound by fostering the maturation of newly formed blood vessels in the area that kind of regrow in after a wound has occurred.
Interesting. So they speed up that process or
That's
improve
that's
it?
the question. We're
Okay.
trying to figure out just what in the heck that they're doing because we know that they play a lot of key roles in this wound healing process, but it's still to
Right.
be discovered and figured out.
And we know that because they rush there when there's a wound. Is that a thing?
Yeah. So there's macrophages in the site. Without getting too much into biology, basically what they do is they act
Talk to me
like
like I'm 12.
they act they act like managers. So basically, they're in the wound, and they're directing different cells on what they should be doing at a particular time, right? So like early in a
Okay.
wound, after a wound happens, there's bacteria in the wound and other bad stuff there, and so the macrophages are like, all right, everybody, let's go kill that stuff, get the
Okay.
bacteria out. And then as your wound starts to progress, the macrophages in the area then start to say, all right, everyone, let's calm down. Let's start building stuff. Let's fix up these shoddy pipes that we threw in real quick, and make
Ah,
everything more, mature. So they're involved in like all stages of the wound healing process, and so trying to figure out how we can, you know,
ah.
engineer the cells, or in a way that they'll essentially heal us even better. That can be faster. That can be quicker with better function after the healing. But yeah. That's
Sounds a
the
lot
idea.
like the corporate middle management structure where they're key to the process, but could always do it better, right?
Yeah, yeah. There's hopefully always
Middle
room for improvement.
middle
Yeah,
management macrophages. There you go.
there you go.
There's there's your thesis title.
Oh, good.
Um so very cool. So um what was your undergrad major? Was it anything related to this?
Right. So, not really. My undergrad was I went to Penn State, and my major was engineering science, which
Okay.
it's like, oh, so what is that? It's basically,
Two words that go
um,
together.
yeah, it's basically almost like a build it yourself major where I took a bunch of different courses from like electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, materials, stuff like that. Um, and then kind of gets put together and you graduate with a degree. And so, what I actually, in my undergrad, I never even really touched biomed until like the last year of college. And then I started to take a couple biomed classes and I was like, oh, this is pretty cool. Um, and then I got into some research and was able to incorporate some biomed stuff that I had been learning in class. Essentially, I had a material from one department, and I was like, you know what? Can I grow cells on this? Oh, cool, I can. Great. And that was
Nice.
essentially, in a nutshell, what my undergrad research was about.
Cool. That's cool. I like to hear people's origin stories to get to their like PhD focus because I feel like, there are some people who are just like very clear cut. Like I majored in this in undergrad and I went to get my master's in the same thing and then the PhD in the same thing. But,
Hmm.
my experience too, I was physics turned materials engineer. We had Mallory on the show recently. She was chemical engineer turned materials engineer, and it's more common than I think people realize that you sort of narrow your focus as you go and can hop disciplines that way.
For sure. I mean, I feel like a lot of people you talk to even say that's, beneficial because it just means you have that much more of a basic. You can approach things from a different angle. To me, I
Yeah.
think that's one of the greatest things about switching fields. So you bring
Yeah,
in a
I
whole new perspective
I
that can really be
absolutely agree.
highlighted.
And working with people from different fields too on solving a problem makes it, you just have this interdisciplinary team at your disposal. What was your so what tell me about your research, your PhD group. Was it a small group, big group? What was the dynamic like there? Or is and
Is yeah.
is
Uh, um, yeah, so it's for our department, it's a fairly large lab. I think usually, of course, students come and go as they graduate and join. I think there's like 8, 9, 10-ish PhD students in the lab generally. Kind of fluctuates from like 6 to 9, I would say.
okay. Yeah,
Um,
that's a decent size.
yeah, so for Drexel, I think it's well, I mean for biomed, I think it's pretty good sized.
Do you have
Um,
postdocs?
yeah, so as yep, right now we have three postdocs. Three
Okay.
postdocs. I think we have two undergrads. I don't know that we have any masters actually. We might have. Well, I think we have a couple bachelor BSMS bachelor master's students in the
Okay.
lab, but as
Yeah,
far as straight
that's
masters, I don't think we have.
yeah, I forgot. That's like a Drexel thing, right? The BSMS.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. That's good. They're good because they have decided they want to do a bachelor's and a master's in the same amount of time as a regular bachelor's. So they're
Well, a
very
regular Drexel bachelor's,
regular Drexel
right?
bachelor's. Yes,
Drexel
correct.
does 5 years, which is
5 year.
really long. Yeah. Well, I say that, but I'm my sixth year here, right?
Yeah, okay. Putting them to shame.
uh,
Um,
somewhat a shame.
yeah. So what made you decide to continue on to get your PhD?
Yeah. So like I said, I was in undergrad. I really started to get. I felt like I got to the game kind of late. So like I was learning about biomedical engineering because the first time, I mean, I heard about biomedical engineering, of course, in like, well, maybe not of course, but I heard about it in high school. But what I thought it was purely prosthetics, and I was like, I don't really want to do prosthetics. That sounds kind of boring. So I was like, it was never even on my radar until I joined the lab and then on a whim decided to take biomedical engineering class called tissue engineering. And I was like, well, that sounds cool. And so I was like learning about it. And I was like, whoa, this is the topics were really cool about how we could use cells and grow them into scaffolds. And then, if the technology progresses enough, you can get real sci-fi with it. So
Yeah.
that was kind of cool. But then as I'm like doing my research, because what I did essentially, I had this material, and like I said, I threw cells on it. But that's like the absolute basis thing you could do. And I was like, I feel like I know nothing.
Yeah.
And if I know nothing, how can I ever hope to succeed at the level I would want to succeed at? And so that's what I was like, I really need to learn more. And the PhD really allows you to dive in deep. So
Yeah.
I'm in deep now.
You're
But
6 years in. You're
yeah,
you're there.
exactly. Yeah.
Um, no, that's really cool. I think that again, that's like a pretty positive origin story for you because you sort of found something you're interested in late enough in your undergrad that you felt like you wanted more school. Um,
Hmm.
whereas I think some people do the school because it's part of the degree, but are really there, for the research. But you were sort of there for both, which is um, Cool. I hope that has made it semi enjoyable.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that was really cool learning about all this stuff for sure.
Um, yeah, I think when I first realized that biomedical engineering was like that broad was when on Grey's Anatomy they were talking about 3D printing an organ, and I was like, wow, that's that is engineering of the biomedical.
Yeah, wild. And that's only like a subsection of biomedical engineering. Yeah, it's
I
like
know,
as big as mechanical engineering, or I
but I
mean,
was with you.
any field really. I mean,
Yeah,
well, probably bigger than all of them because you can take all of them and put them in the body, and boom, you have a whole new field.
yeah,
So
exactly. And
yeah,
I think I was with you though, where I was. I think the first thing you think of is prosthetics as like engineering for the body, but there's just so much more.
yeah, for
So
sure.
much more. Um, what are I know I'm not supposed to ask this to somebody who's like about to graduate, but what are
One of the
your
forbidden
future
questions.
plans?
Yeah,
Wait, to use your PhD? Do you have
yeah,
any? You don't have to have any.
yeah. No. I have hopes and dreams. No. So, yeah, I don't, well, I know I don't, I, from the get-go, I knew I didn't want to be a professor or go into academia. I always knew I wanted to do industry. And so, as far as what I would do, I'd like to stay kind of in the field where I'm at. So, like working on, biomaterials, how our bodies, interact with these materials, or tissue engineering or wound healing. So for me, that kind of helps me find like companies that I want. And so the nice thing is this field has kind of been around long enough that there's a decent selection that's not just startups, So you have a lot of the pharmaceutical branches now, a lot of the pharmaceutical companies now are kind of branching off or opening up little, departments that specifically focus on a lot more of this field that I really want to get into. So for me, that's kind of what I hope to do is apply to some of these industry positions. Yeah, I don't know necessarily pharmaceutical, but probably a bigger company rather than a startup. I think for what I
Just
want.
yeah. Yeah, that's super cool. Are you thinking that you will stay like on the lab bench side of things, or are you interested in like the product development side of things?
Yeah, so the research versus the R and yeah, product development and innovation stuff. Yeah, um, I I I could see myself doing research for a while and then moving into product development, I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Um, just because
I mean, research is what you've
it,
been doing, right? You know how to do that. So that feels like a good starting point, right?
right, yeah. I mean, yeah, that's a great place to start for me. Obviously, I'm trained in it, but I could see myself, within the next 10 years moving away from the lab bench and being
Yeah.
more of the, not so hands-on. I'd be
Yeah.
perfectly fine with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I kind of had the same feeling when I left. I was like, man, I've spent so much time like behind a lab bench. You know what else is out there? And there's plenty out there.
Hmm.
Which is cool. And once you sort of get into the industry side, um, you'll get to see that, which is pretty exciting. Um,
Yeah.
well, I wish you luck with that.
Thanks.
Maybe we'll have you on after that happens. We'll talk about it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
Greg, 1 year later, how is
Yeah,
it going?
right. I'm still here. Still
Oh
at
shit,
Drexel.
we can't keep this episode.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Uh,
Um, so tell me something that um tell me something that was challenging. Uh, yeah, tell me one of the challenges that you faced in the process of getting your PhD.
yeah. So, I would say like one of the biggest things, and it's not even like specific. I mean, it happened to me, but it's not just specific to me. It would be like when you get data back and it has no clear implications of like what it means, and like it's just like nothing is significant, right? So for me
Mm,
it's like you have to have significant differences generally for like the research I do. You don't want to say things are the same, you want to say look, these are different. And so when
right.
the results come back and it's like
You
there's no
consider it like a
differences
fail.
with like you expected, it's like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
then it feels bad, and then you have to like and the challenge then is to figure out, what went wrong and, basically how you can kind of make a story out of it. So that would probably be the biggest challenge and something I'm even still, working on now.
Yeah, I don't think that ever goes away.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, yeah.
I feel like that's, you know how um uh, one of the things I always felt was in academia is that you don't publish those types of results. Like you publish really interesting like
Hmm.
differences or like something like that, but no one publishes like the experiment that where nothing changed because but then everybody else will go and do the same test and not publish it too.
Yeah. It's Yeah, I was kind of thinking about this. The only thing like, other than, I mean, obviously there's the whole, everyone wants the interesting stuff and no one wants to publish the boring stuff. But it's also, I think it tends to be a lot more challenge to show there was absolutely no effect than to show there was an effect.
Sure.
I mean, that's also just kind of how statistics is, right?
Yeah.
It's a lot more difficult to show that there is no, that they're the same rather than there's a difference.
Yeah.
Um, but
Because to show they're exactly the same is very unlikely.
Right, exactly, and so it's so
Yeah.
tough. And so to say that this is the same as that, and then yeah, I don't know. That was the only thing I could really come up with as to why that tends to be the case.
Big
Uh,
questions.
yeah.
Big questions. But yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the big things that you learn in your PhD is how to interpret the results of your experiment. Um, and how to tell a story about it because, humans love stories and
Hmm.
so data is only data until it has meaning. So,
Yeah,
um that will I think that's a useful life skill.
for sure. Yeah,
Um well that that was a good challenge. Thanks, Greg. That was a good one.
sure.
Um so here's let's switch gears a little bit. What do you what's a good memory or some something fun that you'll always remember from your time at Drexel?
Um, let's see. So for me, I guess more than like the research or any of that, it'd be like the friends I made. So like and like the friends I made in lab in particular,
Hmm.
because I tend to spend a lot of time with them. Um, So one of the things that the lab did was it was a couple of years ago, all signed up for a half marathon. Um, and so this, like, we signed up well in advance, so signed up for a half marathon, and so
That's great.
we were all training together. Yeah, meeting up to go run in the morning on like weekends. We would run on our own during the week, and then on weekends we would go do long runs together. And so one of these. One of these mornings happened to like fall the day after a graduate student association sponsored event that happened to have an
Ah,
open bar.
those were the best ones, of
Those were
course.
good, yeah. Except when you happen to drink a little, maybe a little, probably a lot more than I maybe should have,
Yep.
and end up with a hangover the next day, and you have to go for a train or go training for your marathon.
Wow.
Yeah, so I remember I went with a lab. I went to this drinking thing with a lab mate of mine, and then we woke up the next morning, and then I texted her. I was like, "Are you still going to train?" She's like, "Yep." And I was like, "Oh no,"
I
because it was
wanted
probably
you to
like one of
say
the most
no.
hungover I had ever been. Yeah, and I was like, "Oh my God." So then we show up. It was like an 8 a.m. or 9 a.m. run. It
Oh
was nuts
God.
on like a Saturday,
How many
but
miles did you run?
that was 11 miles. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so that was pretty hard. But yeah, we were like dogging it in the back for a while until like I don't know, whatever happened, it kind of dissipated the hangover. But yeah, that's a funny memory.
Wow. Yeah, I think you're always gonna remember that.
Yeah.
The the hangover mixed with marathon training. I think that's a unique experience
Yeah,
and
I'm
one
not
you don't want
don't
to
want to do that
repeat,
again.
probably.
No, not really. No, maybe the
Yeah.
running part, but definitely not the hangover plus running part.
I have some similar stories from I used to go to these like conferences with my professor that were very like small, like very niche topical conferences, and
Hmm.
they always have this like banquet on the last night, so before the final day of the conference talks.
Yeah.
And there was just so much drinking and I would just wake up the next morning and be like, "You want me to go to talks?" Like, I don't understand. Like, I don't anyway, I don't think I ever made it to the last day of talks at any of those conferences. But,
Yeah.
and one time I did miss my flight, so,
Yeah.
but again, memories
Oh,
we'll always have.
whoops. That's
Whoops.
hilarious.
Um, okay, cool. So, Greg, I want to talk to you about what what you do besides running apparently outside of the lab.
Sure. Um, yeah, so I like to brew beer. I make cheese.
Oh,
Uh, I like reading, hiking, running. Yeah, those are yeah typical things. And then of course, I
nice.
mean, since I live in Philadelphia, it's pretty. There's always something. If there's something, I'm bored and I want to do something, I just hop on whatever something, Instagram,
Yeah, there's
whatever
always
you wish
something
you
going
knew.
on.
Yeah, you can find something to
Yeah.
do. So doing just stuff around Philly.
Wait, I want to go back to you make cheese.
Yeah.
Um, what does that entail? And do you
Yeah,
have anything special in your apartment for that process?
yeah.
Oh,
Not super special, really. Yeah. So this is something. Yeah. So to make cheese, sure, we can go into a little tutorial. Yeah. To
let's do it.
to make cheese. I mean, actually, it really depends on what type of cheese you want to make.
Oh,
But if you want to make cheese, there's some basic stuff you need. Yeah. So you need to have milk, right? Obviously, you need to have milk. You need to have and you need to have typically something to coagulate it a little bit. So like rennet. Um,
okay.
and then usually some cultures to give it some flavor. Um, and that tends to be the majority of what you need as far as like raw ingredients. Again, it depends on what you're making.
And then there's
Um,
like time involved, right?
yeah, so it's kind of interesting the different types of cheeses. It's like really the same process,
Uh-huh.
but with different amounts of time and temperature gives you like way different cheeses.
Interesting.
Yeah, like you can do it one way and get cheeses that don't melt. I mean, but that one is more like what you use to um I forget there's it's a term other than coagulate, but um
Gotcha.
I forget the name of the term of it. Um there's different steps to do that. You can use like acids to kind of curdle it, or you can use this rennet to
Gotcha.
yeah
What makes a cheese a
enzymatically.
stinky cheese?
Oh,
It's okay.
that would
I'll ask you next year.
yeah. That's I think that's
Level 2
I
cheese
don't like
maker.
stinky cheeses, so I never really made stinky
Yeah,
cheeses.
I don't either, but I
Yeah, so
I
I guess it would be like maybe high moisture content when you're
hmm,
making it, because then that allows for more like because you make the
more
cheese and then you
cultures.
let it like sit, right? But if there's a lot of moisture in it, then there's a lot more
Hmm.
potential for bacterial growth, maybe. I think that's what makes cheese stinky, but I really don't know.
Yeah, it's a good guess. Good guess from the biomedical engineer.
Uh,
Um, do you have to is pressure something that you can?
yeah, so that would be the special piece of equipment I have. Yeah, I
Okay,
have a
found
a
it.
cheese press. Yeah.
Cheese press. Okay,
Basically, yeah,
cool.
you need a big old kettle and a cheese press. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of people who brew beer at home, something you also do, where you
Yeah.
can change, the amount of hops or um, different factors to just the process is similar, but the outcome is different.
Yeah.
Do you ever brew kombucha?
No, I've never done kombucha. I've done ginger ale.
Oh, what? That's cool.
Yeah,
Is
I
it
mean
good?
that's yeah, I mean it's good. It's you just have to monitor it because essentially the way to get alcohol, you need like three things, right? You need water, you need sugar, and you need yeast. Like
Yeah,
that's all you need, right? So ginger ale, you just make, get get your ginger juice, throw it in some water, some sugar, and your yeast.
and
But
yeast.
then
Yeah.
the yeast, it makes alcohol and then carbon dioxide. So you occasionally have to burp your bottle, so to speak. Otherwise, it gets extremely high pressured.
And then it explodes.
Well, hopefully not, but there was one
Okay.
time I was making it when I was over in the Netherlands. When I was over in the Netherlands, I made it and then I had the one of the swing tops and I was doing it in there. It was the first time I was doing it and I popped the top off. And as soon as I popped the top off, I didn't realize how carbonated it was. I popped it off and then shoo, it just immediately just gushed and like shot out of the bottle. Like
Wow.
imagine taking a soda and just shaking it, and then just completely
Knocking the
removing the
top
top
off.
all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so it got all over my ceiling, and I was like, oh, crud.
Well, you learned,
Spend a
right?
lot of time cleaning. Yeah, so burp your
Yeah.
bottles if you're making ginger ale.
Burp your bottles. Good advice. That reminds me, you when you said you went to the Netherlands, you're from what I remember, your advisor and your group, it's pretty common for you guys to do a research related trip, right?
Yeah, yeah, we're extremely collaborative in
Yeah.
my group.
Can you
Mhm.
talk a little bit about, you don't have to go into specifics, but some of the reasoning behind that for your PI, and also, what your experience was like.
Sure. Yeah, well, this spawned from when she did international study. I think she was in Portugal in a Portuguese lab. And there was a requirement there in that lab that this
Ah,
person's all of his students, they had to go do international travel. And it was just like expected and it was understood. There was not no like it wasn't a surprise. And
yeah.
so when she became a PI, she loved it so much she thought the idea was great, and so she instituted this policy. And so yeah, pretty much every student of hers goes abroad for at least like 2-3 months to do research abroad. Yeah, and so she likes it a lot because it helps to really foster collaborations. And so
Across the
we
world.
just talked about how good it is to have different approaches. And so even if in your same field, just being in different countries, you can really learn a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And you went to the Netherlands.
Yeah, yeah, I went to the Netherlands. Yep, Maastricht.
How was that? The Netherlands. I want to go there.
The Netherlands is really nice. Yeah, I have. Yeah, it was. I really enjoyed my time there. I it was the first first place I ever rode a bike in a city because
Oh,
right. I mean, I would never ride a bike around Philadelphia.
really?
You
Yeah,
have
but
to be pretty. Huh?
they bike in the cities so much in Europe, so that,
Yeah, I mean, they have every road pretty much has a dedicated bike lane
yeah,
in this,
that
at
would
least
be
in the city
nice.
I was in. I think I'm not. Amsterdam does too for the most part, but pretty much yeah, every big city in the Netherlands yeah has these biking lanes, and it's like as far as like rulers of the road go, bikers are pretty high up there. I think the only thing that beats them is like motorized scooters, because
Ah,
yeah,
that makes
I don't know,
sense.
cars are much more respectful over in the Netherlands, but.
Yeah.
I mean, across from the biking though, the people are nice. I mean, it's a little rainy, but what are you
Yeah.
gonna
What
do?
time of year did you go?
Yeah, so I went over in September of 2019, and then kind of had to
Oh,
come back March of 2020.
yeah.
Yeah, so COVID chased me back.
For no reason, of course.
Yeah. I
March
don't
of
know. I wouldn't have mind.
2020.
I don't know. As I was like thinking about it, as far as like maybe I wouldn't have mind spending COVID over there because like slightly better hospital system. I don't know.
Yeah, some people did get stuck places and
Yeah.
really thrived.
Yeah.
Um, that's cool. I think that's I always thought that was an interesting policy of your advisor, but I completely agree with the positives that come out of it, and I think it's also just good to travel and experience how other people do things, because everybody does things differently, It's
Yeah. Yep. It helps you become a more informed and better scientist,
yeah,
as well as like overall well-rounded person. Really.
like person, yeah.
Yeah.
Look at us, we're a Hallmark card. Um, okay, one more question for you.
Sure.
So looking back on your time, if you could give your first year PhD student, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed Greg, showing up at Drexel, if you could give him some advice, what would you give to him?
uh, maybe one that's very personal for me, or specific to me, not necessarily personal. Is for me, it would be don't work in animals. Data gets so messy when you have to do work with animals. Like
And
so in biomed, we
you do
test stuff
that?
in that.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
work in mice. Yeah, um, but as far as stuff that maybe it could be applied for other people who aren't in biomed,
Yeah.
uh, would be for me like don't rush to get data or feel like you're behind the curve, especially when you're like comparing yourself to other people in the lab or like students ahead of you. Like of course they're gonna have more data. I know for me, when I joined, I was like, wow, that's so much data. I'm so far behind. And like, of course, I just joined, but I still
Yeah.
felt that where it was like a lot of pressure in order for me to succeed. I had to have data. So I was like constantly working, going at experiments and not necessarily slowing down to think. I still have that problem, really. Um,
Yeah.
but remembering to slow down and think about your results rather than just saying, it didn't work. Let's move on. You know?
Yeah. No, that's really good advice because I think that it's easy to get lost in that churning cycle of just run an experiment, see the results, run an experiment, see the but
Yeah.
that third step of taking a step back and saying, well, what does this really mean?
And thinking about it, looking at it. Yeah, I mean, it really helps you become a better scientist to slow down and read papers about it and all that, because it even lets you design even better experiments for the next time, or, you know,
Yeah.
yeah. So slowing down is good to do.
Very cool. Um, well, anything that's all the questions I have. Is there anything you want to like plug about yourself? You got any big papers coming out? Presentations, conferences?
I'm wrapping up, so yeah, I'm wrapping up. This last thing that I've been doing is for my paper, for a paper I'm trying to publish, before I leave Drexel. So
Do you have your defense scheduled?
not yet.
Okay,
That's
so
the crux.
that's the next big thing.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, for me, my goal is in August.
Oh,
That's
great.
really what I'm gunning for. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking, 45 minutes of your day,
Yeah, that
where
was
you're
nice.
trying to wrap it up, but yeah, we'll we'll check back in with you
All right.
maybe in a little bit, see how things are going, but also if anyone wants to hire Greg, he's going to need a job soon, so
Yeah, that's true.
um there you go. So, thanks Greg for coming on the show. And reminder to everyone to follow us on Instagram at Impact Factor Pod and check out more episodes coming next week. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye. Yeah, thanks for having me on.